As a tribute to Pat and Cliff on their upcoming 70th birthdays, Joy and I have prepared this little packet of memories, covering a period of slightly over a decade, from the year 1955 through 1967. The original Clare Island road bridge in the fall of 1955. Our first pictures of the Bush family, John and Lynn, with Mum Dean, Mum LaQueer, Dad Dean, Joy and I, Julie and Jennifer. Your neighbors, Elaine and Frank Beasley, in their boat with Molly and Bill Jarvis. And Bob and Marion Lauder and family in 1956. And a shot of Wasdale Falls in 1957. The Koochiching Island picnic that year was our first trip of any account. Gail, Lynn, Jennifer, David, Pat, Cliff, John, Barb, and Joy on the extreme right. Baby David to the lower right. The girls in for a swim. And Joy, Barb, Julie, David and Jennifer, and Lynn. And a canoe trip around the triangle run of that year, 1957, Cliff executed a 180-degree turn running the Long Chute Rapids. The Bush canoe with Lynn, Barb, and Cliff. And the queer homestead as it was originally. We passed that day. Jennifer's birthday, party of 1957, 7 years of age. Barbie attended and looks like she's enjoying a good cob of corn. A hike to Lost Lake with the old river rats, stopping to rest at Split Rock. The forest fire of 57, in which several cottagers were recruited to fight. Clive and Jimmy LaQueer with Gar Lauder in the black and white boat in 1950. If I may be permitted to quote and paraphrase from Pat Cliff's own typewritten account, this is our boat trip, August 1960. On August the 7th, Sunday morning at 8:25, 4 boats loaded with tenting equipment, passengers, etc., set sail, so to speak, from our island in the Severn River at Wasdale Falls for a trip through Trent Canal system, with Peterborough as our goal. We reached our first lock, number 42, at 9:15 a.m. Minor problem, Bill ran out of gas. We just reached the narrows at Atherley when off flew John's cap, but Bill was right behind and swooped it up. We were about halfway across to Gamebridge when the old lake really began to roll. It all happened so fast we had no time to tarp down our roof. In about 10 minutes we were all soaked through. John and Bill dropped their passengers on the bank and spun the launch around and came back out to look for us. Oh, what a welcome sight, that white boat. We proceeded through a series of 5 blocks, all about a half to 1 mile apart. and we reached Canal Lake about 4:30 when clouds suddenly appeared from nowhere. We all decided to look for a campsite pronto. Suddenly, right in front of us, a boat capsized, and off we roared to the rescue. Managed to save the chap and towed his boat into shore. Even saved his motor, too. After about an hour, we were all set up and merrily trying to cook our supper as by this time down came the rain. And we pulled into shore just at the swing bridge at Balsover. Set up tent and merrily trying to cook in the rain. It stopped raining about 7:30. Cliff and I, David, slept in the tiny little shack and felt like kings. It was Pam Marlette's 10th birthday, so half our party the next day decided to walk about a mile or so into Balsover to a little country store for supplies and a gift for Pam. Next morning we were all up at 6 a.m. and broke camp by 9. Reached Kirkfield elevator lock by 9:30. We crossed Balsam Lake by 11, Cameron Lake, and arrived at Fenland Falls by noon. Arrived at Fenland Falls by noon. Stopped to gas up at Champlain Cove. Crossed Sturgeon Lake and reached Bob Cajun by 3 p.m. It was clouding up by this time, and we decided to head for Chemong Lake, where John's uncle has his cottage, hoping we could camp there. We left Bob Cajun by 4 p.m. and were at John's uncle's by 5 p.m. It was really raining by this time, and once again we pitched all our tents in the rain. Next morning it dawned bright and lovely. We packed a lunch and off the 4-boat set once again. It was 11 a.m. by this time, and we arrived at Loch 31 at 12 noon. We went through Lovesick Lake and Loch 29, and stopped at Burley Falls for lunch or shore dinner. It was a beautiful spot, and we swam and ate lunch. By 3:40, we took the boats again to tour Stony Lake and arrived at Juniper Island and gassed up. We stopped at a marina on Buckhorn Lake and all had a hot supper there. The owners were grand people. We all decided right then and there that we would have breakfast there in the morning. It was dark by the time we finished eating, and off we went back to Camp Chemung. Next morning we were up at 5:30. Broke camp by 6:30. Reached Bob Cajun at 8:50. Went through Canal Lake and on to the lift locks at Kirkfield. We we reached Kirkfield elevator lock number 36 by 1:45 p.m. We arrived at Lake Simcoe at 4:30 in the afternoon. We started out into the lake, but it was far too rough. So we turned back and headed 2 miles up the shore to the new Beaverton Motel. This is Beaverton Harbor. It is a fabulous place, and the owner, Mr. Rogers, is a very obliging chap. By this time, we just couldn't face pitching our tents one more night. So Mr. Rogers phoned out to Beaverton to inquire about sleeping accommodation for us all. He also ordered us a lovely hot dinner from the Surf Room Highway restaurant. While all 17 of us were eating merrily, Mr. Rogers wandered over to inform us he'd found accommodation in the town for us all for the night. About 9 p.m., down came, of all things, a school bus, and off we drove into Beaverton. What fun! As we drove through town, the picture playing at the local theater was called The Last Voyage. Ironic? Next morning we were up at 7 and the bus picked us up at 8 to take us back down to our boats. We pulled out of Beaverton Harbor and into Lake Simcoe by 9 a.m. and reached the locks, Lock 42, and we're all once again back on terra firma. 8 bells and all's well. It was a wonderful adventure. Wouldn't have missed it for the world. Here the bushes are preparing to leave for their home. A few fall shots of 1961. The boathouse, J. Dean. They were constructing Lock 43 at the Swift, and the water had been lowered at this time. Buckshot and the steam bath, the lobster pot, Blueberry Hill, looking down at the Bushes Point with the pine tree overhanging the river, and a hello from Joy, Juliet, Jennifer, and Johnny from the boathouse. 1962. Jennifer's 12th birthday. Pat Bush in the foreground. Jennifer blowing out the candles. A visit from the Bushes in their canoe. And in 1962, we took the Triangle canoe trip again, stopping at Joy's Aunt Lena's cottage for lunch. And Cliff and Garlotter and David deciding what to do next. Gar, Lynn, and I believe Jennifer, Joy, Brian Lauder, and Juliet. Cliff, David, and Barb. And a welcome portage over Wasdale Falls and home again. In 1963, the Seppenins drove our cars and canoes to Seabright for a Head River canoe trip. Here we are, the Bushes and the Deans, going down the Head River. Cliff portaging. Do you remember the leeches at each portage? And a welcome stop for lunch. Down the Black River. In 1962, if I may backtrack, we purchased the big house, Gene and Nell Halstead, showing the original conditions of the lawn and hedges. And in the winter, we entertained the Bushes for a ski and snowmobile venture. Jennifer all prepared. In 1964, we built the chalet, which you well remember. Edgar and Elsie Dean in front of it. And a visit to Penetang Machine with the Marlettes and the Bushes to see the... In 1964, we built the Johnny D. Dad and Juliet out from one of the regular paddles. Another shot of the Johnny D. And all that remained of her in the fire at Reed's that fall. But we had fun too. The meeting of the SRS of that year, the Severn River Socializers with the Halsteads, the Curtises, the Armstrongs, the McQueers, the Marlatts, and the Bushes and Corbridges. Then in 1965, a great group of us, including the Halsteads, the Deans, the Bushes, the Marlatts, the Youngers, and the McQueers, went for a picnic to Lake Couchiching. Quite a group. I wondered the island didn't sink. Everyone was enjoying themselves. Including Uncle Leon. Owen Ever the Cavalier carrying his wife out to the boat, Eve. Dave Unger, Cliff, and Gene Halstead preparing to leave the island, having a cool one. Bush paddling out to deeper waters. Meeting a flotilla of boats at the highway bridge at number 11. And coming into a crowded Lock 42. And of course, our 1965 Severn River Socializers gathering with Pat and Doug Corbridge, Don Curtis making a dissertation, Cliff and Ernie doing their thing, a guitar session by the fireplace. Carol Spratt giving a talk on earlobe nibbling. And back to Cliff and Ernie. Carol Spratt. And finally, a steam bath. Don emerging, steaming from the lobster pot. Gene Halstead, myself, and Don Curtis. And a final plunge into the cold Severn. In 1966, the SRS meeting was at the Corbridge Cottage. November the 19th, no, excuse me, this is at our house. Up in the sunroom on the guitar. Mel Halstead and Pat Corbridge surveying the river. And a final group picture showing that everyone is still kicking and alive, no hangovers. All that remained of the Johnny D. This is the 1966 Corbridge Cottage Severn River Socializers meeting. Owen Marlatt, myself, Ev LaQueer, Brother Bob Dean, Bev Dean, and dear old Pat Bush. Once again, Ev, and that handsome fellow at the bottom was Clark Gable. Oh, excuse me, it's Pat Bush, with Eve to his right. And Mom Leon LaQueer all dressed up for the festivities. Joy and Leon the Davies, Lorraine and Dick. John couldn't stay up for the late hours of the party, nor could someone else. The next morning, things weren't quite as gay. Pat, Corbridge, Eve, and Owen. And a final group picture of the gang. And a final greeting from Joy and I. This was taken on our wedding day, September the 17th, 1949, at Anchor Beach Lodge, just outside of Washago. We wish you all the best, Pat and Cliff. Washago Now and Then, Part 1, by Johnny Dean. Entering Washago from the north, about 1914, this is the tortuous road that led from about where the bus line terminal is at present toward town. On the left is the Wilkins house and the church and driving shed, and the original school built within the limits of Washago, at that time a one-room school. Looking across the road from Wilkins' house to the southeast, the building in the house in the center is the present site of the post office. The old Northern Hotel, presently owned by Gene Smith, and renamed the Washago Hotel. Looking north from the juncture of what would now be Highway 169, south along the main street, north along the main street of Washego. The building immediately to the right was a hotel, and down further on the right you'll see what is now the trading post. Beyond that, the White House is Robinson's General Store, and you'll note the to the left Miller's store in the foreground, and beyond that the Northern Hotel. Looking north along the center branch at the old Washego Mill, again the Northern Hotel on the extreme left, and Robinson's white general store to the right of it. Removing some of the granite outcrops in Washego during the building of the Ferguson Highway, which was named after one of our former Ontario premiers, Howard Ferguson, and eventually became number 11 highway. This shows the padding they put on the rocks to stop the debris from flying too far afield. And in those days they used logs instead of rubber tires chained together. Again, a picture of the Wilkins home about 1914, and the church and school to the right. It was in front of the Wilkins home that the last picture of the highway was shown being constructed. In keeping with the generosity of Arthur Wilkins of Washego, who loaned me these particular old photographs in this group, we have taken the liberty of entering the one of his father's home in Washego about 1914. Southerly, down the backyards on the west side of Washego's main street, the Northern Hotel is to the right of the picture, and Wilkins Arbor in their garden, slightly off right center. Looking northeasterly from Wilkins' garden, you'll note the back of the white building is the church. Another house owned by the Wilkins immediately to the south of the original homestead in Washego. Again, the Arthur Wilkins home as it appeared, with the addition of a porch on the front. An aerial view on a postcard looking south on Muskoka Street, Washego. Closer shot of the same postcard showing the church in the foreground Wilkins' home slightly behind it to the right, and the second house to the south of it again. The same postcard moving down the street toward the south end of Muskoka Street and Lake Koochiching in the upper right. The Washago Hotel of later years. The Washago post office housed in Miss Addie LeQueer's residence at that time on the west side of Muskoka Street. Beside it, Nike Hennessy's home. Postcard is entitled "After the Snowstorm, Washago, Ontario." Before the township and Department of Highways took over serious snow plowing, but summertime in Washago could be a very lovely time of the year. Main Street, Washago, Ontario. One of the early steam locomotives arriving at the Washago station. The loading platform at the Washago station. And another shot of the same. An early postcard, CNR Station, Washago, Ontario. Note the old water tower to the left. An early photo of St. Paul's Anglican Church. The altar at St. Paul's Anglican Church. Another early postcard, Washago, Ontario, from the coal chute, looking north. The railroad track running up to the center of the photo, Stroud's boathouse and livery to the right, the town dock in the foreground, and the Washago Hotel slightly to the right center. A close-up of the station, water tower, and Anglican church to the left. Looking north from Stroud's boathouse up Muskoka Street to with the Washago Hotel center top. A hand-tinted photograph of the center branch running under the railroad bridge. Main Street, Washago, left center. A postcard, R. Stroud Boat Livery, Washago, Ontario, looking down the center branch from the railroad bridge. Looking south from Stroud's Boat Livery at the south end of Muskoka Street, across the center branch. Looking out toward Lake Koochiching from Stroud's Boat Livery, note the Oak Point Bridge in the background. The south end of Muskoka Street in Washego, looking across from what is now Knob Hill, Sproud's boat livery to the extreme left, and the center branch running down to the right in the center. This appears to be the bridge over to St. George's Island from Muskoka Street in southern Washego, although we're not too sure of that identification. An early postcard, Ye Old Mill, Washego, Ontario, looking down the center branch towards the lumber mill, with the grist mill to the right. A close-up shot of the old mill. To the left today is the Washego Lumber Company. Looking northwest at the Washego Lumber Mill. Looking south up the center branch at the dam from the old lumber mill. Note the sluiceway and the flume that led to the lumber mill to drive its equipment. Lads of Washego in the early boating days. Canoe rigged for sailing on the center branch, just above what is now, beside what is now 69 Highway. The boathouse to the right is across the road from the Griggs home, Island View. Later innovations in boating near Washego. Note the old outboard to the left, and an extremely new innovation, the paddle wheel, paddle-operated boat to the right. The old highway bridge at Little Falls. A postcard of the same bridge, written in 1943. The early control dam at Little Falls. The same dam from a little closer vantage point. The outflow at Little Falls. A shot looking up the rapids at Big Falls. One of the early bridges over the Washego area, possibly over the Black River. The outflow from Big Falls looking to the east. A pretty scene, west branch of Severn River, Washego, looking to the south from the long chute to rapids. Another photograph of the west branch. The rocky point at Little Falls, looking south. Looking up Big Falls Rapids at the railroad bridge at the head. From Little Falls, the point on which Wolf Lattiser built his cabin resort. The long chute on the west branch looking upstream or north. Wooden bridge that spanned the west branch at Muskoka Street or Old Number 11 Highway just south of the Coopers Falls Road, looking northeast. An early bridge in the Washego area, according to Art Wilkins, it spanned the west branch immediately above the main branch of the Severn, which is in the background according to the report. It was used by the early lumber companies, apparently. Upstream at the rapids, just below what is now the Blue Bridge. Another rapid said to be on the west branch. A bridge said to be in the vicinity of Washego. Possibly the one at Little Falls, although it looks slightly smaller than that. A postcard, Coopers Falls, Ontario. I gather before the bridge was built across this area. An early postcard looking downstream at the Black River near Coopers Falls. An early postcard, Main Street, Coopers Falls, Ontario. Looking west toward Cooper's store and the gas pump, with the car in front of the store. A few treasured photographs of Wasdale Falls before the hydroelectric power dam and plant were built there in 1914. A log jam at Wasdale Falls. Looking north across the Severn River from the Mickle Diamond Lumber Mill at the original first steel bridge on limestone piers constructed across the river there at Severn Bridge. In the background at the town dock is moored the Gee Whiz, which was built by Norman Bennett and Mr. Whitesides of Hamilton. Pardon me, of Hamlet. Notice the log booms ready to be loaded onto the conveyor system and taken into the mill in the foreground. A closer shot of the Gee Whiz. It was a twin boiler, apparently. An historic photograph of the building of Lock 42, the Couching Locks, on the canal system between Lake Couching and the Severn River, about 1914. The bridge over the locks, which is in existence today, was not at that time constructed. Notice the cement tower supplying cement to the various parts of the job site, and the galvanized shack to the right was there for a number of years after the completion of the lock. A rare photograph of the tugboat Mickle pulling a barge through Lock 42. This was probably owned by the Mickle Diamond Lumber Company. Early photos of the Swift Marine Railway. A couple of canoeists, probably Art Wilkins and another lad accompanying what looks like Richardson, pardon me, looks like appears to be an earlier model of the Grew Boatworks. Quite a large craft, I would think, probably 38, 40 feet. A close-up of the Marine Railroad car at the Swift, possibly a gravette boat on the pads. The dam and the flume below the Swift rapids. One of the Randolph McDonald Company's steam shovels used in the construction of the canal between Lake Couching and the Severn River. A crew removing the rock spoil from the blasting operations by horse and cart during the construction of the canal. An early photo of Sparrow Cottage at Port Stanton. Looking downstream or west at the CPR Bridge, Severn Falls. My grandfather's boathouse at Dean Elm is to the right. An early postcard, October 1949, showing Doug Smith's store post office at Severn Falls and his dock and gasoline facilities. Upstream from Walter Dean's dock at the CPR Bridge, Severn Falls. Another postcard dated August 1945, showing the CPR Bridge looking downstream. At this point, my grandfather has built a second story to his boathouse. These were taken by J.W. Bold Services in Midland. Pardon me, J.W. Bold Series, Midland. A scene on Pretty Channel, the rapids near Severn Falls. The postcard, Severn River from the bridge. That would be the south end of the CPR bridge at Severn Falls, showing my grandfather's cottage, Eldine, in one of its earlier states to the right, and another cottage he built which was later occupied by my uncle Walter Dean to the left. Close-up shot of Eldine. An early postcard of Buckskin Island. The boat in the center is probably a Miss Coca built by the Walter Dean Canoe and Boat Company. And I would believe that the man in the stern is my father, Edgar Dean, and my uncle Walter Dean sitting forward. Coca boats were powered by a one-cylinder Kingfisher motor. Postcard dated September 1943, looking down the Big Chute Rapids. To finish up the series of Art Wilkins' historic photographs, there are some general ones which we felt should be included. This one shows a beautiful muskie, probably caught on the Severn River. The lift locks at Peterborough. Possibly a photograph of the floating causeway across Lake Chemong north of Peterborough in the early days. An early postcard, business section of Toronto, Ontario, from an aeroplane. Copyright Canada, 1919, by Canadian Postcard Company, Toronto. The ornate flower bed of the Canadian Pacific Railway at Port McNicoll in the earlier days. The airport at North Bay. Main Street, North Bay, Canada. Picnicking beside number 11 highway near Cumberland Beach in the early days. The old pine stump as a backdrop, the old pine stump fence as a backdrop. A photograph of Black River. Final shot of the chute on the West Branch. My second visit to the Trent Canal office, photo library, on February the 24th, 1989. This is an early shot of Hydro Glen. The store that was located there at one time. A photo dated October the 12th, 1926, showing Lockmaster J.A. White's residence at Port Severn. October the 6th, 1927, the Swift Rapids Marine Railway Operator's House under construction. Nickel Diamond and Sons Lumber Mill at Severn Bridge. The steam launch Glen Rose at Sparrow Lake. A diver's barge and a derrick showing how they removed the rock from the bottom of the channels. Kirkfield lift locked on opening day. An older picture of the Washego lumber mill. March the 5th, 1933. A panorama at the Big Chute, looking at the powerhouse and the boarding house to the top. A couple of shots of the Bessie Butler, flagship of the Department of Railways and Canals. The SS Spartan, later renamed the Lady Franklin, circa 1903, at Severn Bridge. It was used as a towboat. The tug Severn at the Washego Canal Office. A pontoon gate lifters used to erect the gates of the various locks throughout the Trent Severn waterway. A dump barge used by the canal authorities. Preparing to move a span of the Bennett's Bridge upstream to become the sixth span at Hamlet Swing Bridge. Here we see it loaded on two scows and being moved by a tug. Lumberman and a sorting jack. Victoria Harbor Lumber Company planing mill and number 1 mill, circa 1890. Victoria Harbor Lumber Company, number 3 mill, about 1890. Logs in the Severn River above the Severn Bridge. July 1927. The workman's axe to the right. August the 20th, 1915, excavating the canal between Lake Couchiching and the Severn River. A rare shot of the steamer Wabano, which during a severe storm capsized and sank off the haystacks in Georgian Bay. The boilers still remain in that area, and the hull washed ashore. August the 4th, 1928, the Nickel Diamond Lumber Mill, looking across the Severn River toward the south. The canal office at Washago, now raised for quite a few years. The grist mill to the right and the lumber mill to the left, Washago. Once again, the grist mill with the Washago and the blacksmith shop off to the right from below the dam. Looking south up the center branch of the Severn River at Washago toward the 69 Highway Bridge. The control dam above Big Falls. Looking downstream at the Log Canal Dam and road built to replace the one that was washed out in 1929 after a severe flood created havoc in Lake St. John, or St. John. A photo looking upstream at the same dam, March of 1929. And another photo of the same area from a different vantage point, March 24th, 1929. Utilizing the fill from the canal, the sailing banks were constructed out into the north end of Lake Couchiching. The bridge at the blacksmith shop in the early days with the A.W. Grigg boat livery to the left behind. looking south in Washago at the A.W. Grigg home, Island House, with what would now be the 169 Highway Bridge to the right on the center branch. According to the file, it says, looking south-west at site of Dam D, flume to flour mills, November 7th, 1917. Looking northeast at wharf, storehouses, and contractor's plant to the left in the distance, November 7th, 1917. Looking northwest upstream at Dam B, or Little Falls Dam, November 7th, 1917. The CNR swing bridge on the canal during construction. The CNR bridge, again under construction, October the 12th, 1916. A view of the flour mill and tail race, Washago, May 22nd, 1922. Another view of the mill on the same date. A small road bridge near Washago, May the 22nd, 1922. The Washago Dam from the lower side, ditto. Clay seams from the Behario site, which was a tile and brick manufacturing company on the banks of the canal. Dam B, site before the building of the Little Falls Dam, looking upstream from the water gauge after on-watering and before the work was done, January the 14th, 1935. June the 23rd, 1919, the cofferdams and rock cut above Rama Road Bridge in the center branch. June the 23rd, 1919, the cofferdams and rock cut above Rama Road Bridge, center branch. June the 23rd, 1919, looking southeast from near east end of Dam E, showing the lower cofferdam, woolen mill building, etc. A party of gentlemen from Toronto and Central County arriving by special train. The GTR station was built sometime around 1900 and torn down in the early 1950s. Another shot of the Severn railway station. And the steel bridge being erected at Severn Bridge. Note the old structure in the background with the cranes to the left. The original steel bridge at Severn Bridge after the fire of 1906, when Severn had sidewalks. It appears to be the gee whiz tied up slightly to the left of the bridge at the town dock, and the hotel up on the hill. Looking north on number 11 Highway, 1932, Ed Manson Residence and Butcher Shop, Harry Miller Grocery Store and gas station across the road, and the Orange Hall on the hill. This was taken from the burner of the Nickel Diamond Lumber Company mill. South on Highway number 11, 1932, the United Church Store Continuation School and Sawmill in the background. SS number 1, Morrison, 1863 to 1959. This is a postcard entitled Sawmill, Severn Bridge, Ontario, looking generally in the northwest direction across number 11 Highway. A little dinky engine was used to haul lumber from the mill to be piled in the lumber yards, operated by Sam Scott. Here, a view of the Nickel Diamond Mill in Severn Bridge. Looking toward the northeast across all number 11 highways to the rear of the mill in this picture. View of the mill from across the river. Notice the log booms in the Severn River. The little boat in the front was called the Hoo-Hoo, was owned by Nickel and Diamond and operated by Walter Connor. The Gee Whiz was owned and operated by Norman Bennett and Jim Whiteside. The Lakeside, I believe in the center, was owned and operated by Frank Stanton. In the background on the right is the hotel. In the foreground is the jack ladder to the mill, taken before the fire of 1906. You don't sound in good shape. The Manson home and butcher shop built after the fire of 1906 and later destroyed by a blast on the highway during construction, April the 8th, 1948. Manson's new residence to the left, a butcher shop and hardware store built in 1951. It was demolished in 1960 when the highway was widened and a new bridge was built here. This is the railroad bridge being completed in 1891. The railroad went through Severn in 1774, and by 1878 Severn was a thriving village with 2 stores, post office, church, Orange Hall, hotel, and sawmill. panorama of Severn Bridge in the early days. The starting on the extreme right is the boarding house for the nickel diamond lumber mill, and the mill itself, the big burner, and the one of the original steel bridge, number 11 highway. Gib Race's house, the dark house beside the highway. And looking, coming up toward the main part of Severn Bridge to the lower left. Showing our panoramic view upriver, you'll notice the shingle mill in the slight upper right corner. Booms of logs for the nickel diamond mill in the river. And Miller's, just the corner of Miller's store in the lower right. And panning up Jackson's garden and Jackson's store and home. The main street of Severn Bridge passing right in front of it. And the driving shed of Jackson's to the left of the car, and their barn in the center left. The beginning of Caldwell. A view looking across the Severn River to the north from the jack ladder at Nickel Diamond Mill. At the Hoo-Hoo, a boat owned by the lumber company and operated for them by Walter Connor. This is a section of a small section of the photograph earlier. It will be followed by two other photographs of close-ups of boats parked upstream from the Hoo-Hoo. These pictures were taken before 1906, when the big fire occurred in Severn Bridge itself. The next close-up upstream from the Hoo-Hoo shows the lake field, a boat operated by Tom Stanton. In the background is Raymond's house, R-E-A-M-A-N, to the left, and the old hotel to the right. In the foreground are the log booms awaiting their transport into the mill. And finally, the Gee Whiz moored forward of the lake field, built by Mr. Bennett and Mr. Whitesides of Hamlet. The old bridge, possibly the first steel bridge, in the upper right. Situated immediately to the east of the blacksmith shop in Washago, across the center branch on the north side of what is now number 169 highway, is the two-story block residence of A.W. Grigg. No, the house to the right has since been demolished. This shows the grist mill to the left. Arthur Grigg brought in, so it is said, 300 wagon loads of fill to bring the property up to its present level. Before the advent of the motor car, this was the principal means of transportation, a team and wagon, this one being a two-seater with the Grigg home in the background. The Grigg home looking north from the center branch, showing Grigg's boathouse to the right and the homestead on the left. The home was called Island House because it was situated on an island at that time, and was used at times as a tourist home. Notice the British ensign flying from the boathouse roof. Looking north again from a similar vantage point on the center branch, the boathouse to the right, and Arthur Grigg has added the porch to the building on two sides and a sunroom on the second story. Looking west toward the rear of the blacksmith shop, across the front porch of the Grigg home, a repeat of a former snapshot. To the right of the Grigg boathouse was a waterway and flume that led to the woolen mill, which is seen just above the right peak of the boathouse. In 1927, a bridge was erected over this waterway and was posted with a plaque. Peace Bridge, erected in 1927 by County of Ontario, so named to commemorate the bond of friendship between A.W. Grigg and John Agnew. The plaque has since been stolen. Looking east across the center branch at the rear of the Grigg home, with the addition to the back, and the house that has since been demolished to the left of the photograph. A treasured historical photograph looking west along what is now 169 highway from the old wooden bridge that crossed the center branch in those days. To the right, the blacksmith shop, the Methodist church, the white building, and coaches and freight cars of the railroad at the Washego station. To the left, the White House is the Wilson residence. Mrs. A.W. Grigg peering down at the waters of the center branch. Moving slightly to the right of the last photograph, take in more of the blacksmith shop and the bridge railing on the north side of the roadway. A rather nostalgic photograph of Mr. Grigg's boat with the island house in the background. Notice the wicker chairs. A final picture of Mrs. A.W. Grigg standing at the gateway to Island House. It must be pointed out that these last series of photographs concerning the Grigg family were by courtesy of Mr. and Mrs. Lyons, who presently live in the Grigg home. As of May the 17th, 1988. Severn Falls Summer Resort Cottage. 2-392, August 4th, 1922, Severn Falls Summer Resort Cottage. 402, October 11th, 1916, 6 Mile Lake Dam.
Thanks a lot.
Well, don't thank me, thank you. For goodness sake, sure.
Thank you for writing it.
You know my cousin at all, Don Curtis?
Don Curtis.
He's a doctor.
I haven't lived in Peterborough very long.
Oh, haven't
I just started here in October.
Oh, I see.
So I moved from Cornwall, so I'm not really a local.
So you're more related to things that are going on down there.
Well, I've worked for parks for a long time, but at various sites, so more in the job through that connection rather than a local connection.
Well, I want to thank you for your kindness.
Oh, no
if I
problem.
don't see you, I'll see that all the files get back where I
Okay,
found them.
sure.
Now, do I just leave this with you then, this one?
If this is the only one you want, sure.
Well,
we
right
can-
now.
If there's any others, you could just leave them on my desk.
Okay.
Okay? And I've got your address, so we'll see about getting a copy made.
Maybe I should get 2 copies of the photograph. Or what are you making, negatives, or what do they do?
I think what they do is make a negative and then a black and white print from that. Okay,
Right.
so you could, if you wanted, say, an 8x10, is that what you like? Something
Yeah,
like this
maybe
again?
2 8x10s.
Okay, we could
And
do
the
that.
negative.
Okay, and then
Okay.
we'll pay for it, and then you could just reimburse
Fine,
or whatever.
whatever you wish.
Okay, sure.
Okay, there.
Do 8x10.
Yep.
If there's anything else, just leave it with us.
Well, there's so much here that I think I'm going to have to come back and kind of go through it again because it's so interesting.
Yeah.
I don't want to miss anything.
Well, feel free to come back anytime.
I will.
There's no rush.
Do I phone you, or is it necessary? Is it better to phone you?
Might be wise. There might be someone else in here doing, and you wouldn't
Okay.
want to sort of trip over them, but
No,
just phone John or I and tell us you're coming, and
because I probably want to bring some more VCR tape and
Uh-huh.
stuff. And you have a plug-in. I could plug my camera right in. I'm using a power pack right now.
we do.
It's-
Well, there's a plug right there.
See, I could plug it right in here
Yeah.
and work directly.
Sure. Just phone us the day before.
Okay, we'll do
Let
that.
us know.
Thanks again. 56-147, August the 4th, 1923. Temporary store and post office at Severn Falls. 56-158, April the 21st, 1920. Present CNR crossing of canal from Kavanaugh Swing Bridge. 1913, the fledgling Hydroelectric Power Commission of Ontario decided to build a generating station at this site at Wasdale Falls, which was the second portage coming downstream from Lake Couchiching on the Severn River. This is a rare photograph of the area before the plant was constructed. The work on the Wasdale generating station continued through the winter of 1913 and 14, and it was set in operation later in the 1914. The island below Wasdale Falls that Walter Dean became quite interested in purchasing in 1919. Previously, it had been owned by a Margaret Rainey and was deeded over to William Ormsby, who was a merchant grocer in Severn Bridge, the 31st of January, 1901. So at that time, for this 11-acre island was $175. An offer of sale was made out by Maud Ormsby. I hereby offer Island Clare in River Severn, about 11 acres, and shack opposite hydropower plant Wasdale Falls for the sum of $350 cash. The title is to be good, and W. Dean is to pay for deed and other expenses. I pay taxes to date. You are to have time to search title. Dated Toronto, September 30th, 1918, to Walter Dean. The signature of Walter Dean signifies the acceptance, and received from me a check for $100, dated Toronto, October the 9th, 1918, signed Maud Ormsby. The deed from Maud Ormsby to W. Dean was duly registered on November the 16th, 1918. Walter lost little time in subdividing this island. This is a Glendale, a plan of subdivision of Clare's Island in the Island A in the Severn River, opposite Lot 11, Concession 18, Township of North Arita. Plan 644, completed by Walter's surveyor companion, Mr. Avery, September the 31st, 1919. The island subdivision consisted of 25 lots. On it, Walter built several cottages of war surplus airplane crates that were being sold off by the government on the cessation of hostilities in France. He built Breezy Point down at the end of the island. Another cottage now called Odd Lynn, which is still in existence and owned by George Duke Cartwright, and a Lucky Severn cottage, a Shady Nook, and another cottage which I remember falling down in the winter as a young lad. He had the shack opposite Wasdale Falls, which was apparently there when he bought the property. Another cottage was built and owned eventually by people by the name of Essex, and one built here by Walter for the Fergusons, and another one for the Tozers. I forgot one cottage which was located about the cottage located approximately here, which was called Woodlawn Cottage. It fell down again with snow load when I was a youth. These are two of the cottages under construction on the narrow side of the island. What would become Tozer's Cottage on the right, and the Ferguson Cottage slightly off-centered. Breezy Point Cottage on Lot 24, a one-time summer residence of Edgar Dean before he built his own cottage on the island. The Ferguson Cottage in the background, which since was destroyed by fire subsequent to 1940. The lovely lady in the foreground is the present June Rowlands, was on the Metropolitan Council of Toronto. The cedar handrail footbridge across to Clare's Island in the early days. Originally it was nothing but a log with a plank nailed to the top of it. Another of Grandpa Dean's cottages, which was eventually owned by the Lauder family and called Lucky Severn. By far the most interesting cottage built by Walter of airplane crates was Shady Nook. The railing around the veranda was supported by wooden airplane wing ribs. Walter Dean letterhead from the foot of York Street. About this time, Edgar Dean, my father, and my grandfather Walter became quite competitive as to who could escape to Severn Falls and leave the other behind to manage the business. Unfortunately, this is undated. It says, "Dear Pa, the poetic bug has got my lug, and I listened to its calls, for Mr. Kane drove me insane when he mentioned Severn Falls. I thought behind I was destined to see the season through. My autumn work I could not shirk, now find I'm able to. I only wish to catch that fish and land it in the boat. As to the deer that made me queer, it must have been a goat. And to my isle I have to smile and have to say goodbye. They dynamite took, and on heaven's hook she's hanging to the sky." Possibly on a letterhead such as this, Edgar and Walter corresponded with a couple of more poems. At this time, you'll note that Edgar M. Dean and W.J. Gilbert Dean, on the upper right, had joined Walter Dean in the boat business. Edgar Dean wrote to Severn Falls. This is a picture of him standing with the Parkdale station in behind and the remains of the old Dean Boat Works and what remains of Sunnyside. I wonder, Severn Falls. Edgar Dean to Walter Dean. I wonder if the railway train goes by at 4:30 to wake and tell you that sun has tapped at morning's door. I wonder if the bass and salmon still leap into the air to get their food at early morn as they did when I was there. I wonder if that wildcat still crouches for a spring over the flaming fireplace and does the kettle sing? And does that pistol in its belt with rifles for a pair still hang above the mantelpiece as they did when I was there? And does the Severn River flow as pure, as clear, as fair, meandering through its paradise as it did when I was there? Walter replied in kind, I got your letter, and I'm feeling better. I now sit down to write, to let you know just how things go when you are out of sight. The work goes good. We've lots of food. The victuals disappear, I think, less, I must confess, than they did when you were here. You ask, dear boy, if the trains annoy that pass at 4:30. No, it's a little song that all night long the mosquito makes, I fear. And the Severn River, nor faltering ever, flows just the same today, and ghosts still glide o'er its waters wide as the day you went away.